Thank you, Senator.
Absolutely. Good to see
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, sir.
So, a nation that great has to beware of threats to its very existence.
Absolutely.
Yesterday, Biden mobilized reserves. What do you think of that? And are you concerned that we're moving, as we seem to be, toward war with Russia?
Yeah, so I would say that without any question, we should never allow American soldiers to be engulfed into the challenge between Ukraine and Russia. Our boots on the ground should not be there. The ability, I think one of the failures of President Biden has been his inability to articulate America's national vital interest.
Wait, may I ask, so you're saying that it's in our national interest, vital national interest, to degrade the Russian military, in other words, to fight Russia with other people's soldiers?
I would say it this way. If you think about the world order that we established after World War II, if you think about a rules-based system, where does a rules-based system come from? It comes from this nation, our Judeo-Christian foundation, that says that there are rules of the road, that there is something called absolute truth. And we established that. As a part of that absolute truth, what we're trying to do is make sure that our home front remains safe. Keeping our home front safe means that evaluating the actual threats to our country, the most immediate military threat that could happen is Russia. Why is a good question. You look at their sixth generation jets, you look at their hypersonic weapons, you look at their nuclear arsenal. Everything that we do that degrades the Russian military is good for America. You look at the long-term threat to our nation, it's China. Their existential threat that we face long-term becomes China. You look at this rising axis of evil that we're seeing being formed, it's Russia, China, and Iran. Breaking that to pieces before it gets started, I think, is in our vital interest.
Quickly, so why not force a peace?
How would you do that?
Well, you could tell Ukraine, and they are a client state of the United States, without American backing, there's kind of no Ukraine. We're literally paying the salaries of their bureaucrats. We want you to sit down, as they tried to do, but were stopped by our government, and stop this war. Yeah. And reach a peace as one does, where both sides, concede some of their interests. Like, why wouldn't that be in our interest to do that?
I think the faster we get to peace, the better off we are. What we don't want to do, from my perspective, is allow ourselves to ask for a premature peace that cannot be achieved as the alliances continue to come together. To the extent that we can find our path out of this situation, the better off we are.
So what's the point at which we'll know that we've achieved our goal?
I would say that the objective should be for Zelensky and Ukraine to be able to achieve victory by maintaining as much of their territory as they possibly can, and then seeing the resources that we've deployed, along with our Western alliances, achieving the peace that I believe comes when you get these two folks to sit down and have a conversation that allows them to determine where those lines will be drawn for the next 100 years.
Okay. Let me ask you a sort of non-Ukraine question. So I was just in Eastern Europe, much poorer than the United States. But one thing you notice in the cities I have visited there is that there aren't a lot of, or really any, drug addicts living on the streets, ODing on the streets. The so-called homeless problem, which is a huge feature of life in this country, doesn't kind of exist or seem to exist there. What do you think of the fact that we've got hundreds of thousands of people living on the streets and dying there? What should we do about it specifically?
In America?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to recognize is that we are in the midst of a mental health crisis as a nation.
Yeah.
You think about the fact that there are several pieces of the puzzle that come together that we have not yet addressed. You look back into the 1980s and early 90s, we had 600,000 additional hospital beds for mental health issues that we have today. So part of the crisis that we see manifesting in three major areas is a mental health crisis that we could help solve if we address the actual mental health crisis that underlies those issues. The first one is the fact that over 100,000 Americans have lost their lives to overdoses in the last 12 months. 70,000 Americans have lost their lives because of fentanyl. We could stop fentanyl from crossing over our southern border by closing our southern border, building a wall the reality that because of COVID, we locked our kids out of schools because the left is so committed to the teachers' unions that they did the wrong thing for our kids. And what did we see as a result? A 30% plus increase of our youngsters going to the ER for mental health challenges. We need to get back to some honest bedrock truth that sets captives free, and the way that we do that is by focusing our attention on these three major issues that we need to address as a nation.
May I ask, and thank you for saying that about the 100,000 Americans, mostly young people, mostly not in the cities, dying every year. So that's hundreds of thousands just in the last several years. Why? And you said we should build the wall that was started and then dismantled. Why not build a human wall with, say, the reservists who were called up to go defend Ukraine? Why wouldn't they be defending our border?
Totally agree with you. Yeah.
The Pentagon has said, the last president kind of suggested that, didn't do anything about it, but he suggested it. And I think most people thought, well, that's not a crazy idea. And the Pentagon said, like, no, we're not going to do that, as if it's their call. Why would you fund the Pentagon if they are refusing to defend the United States?
Here's what I've already done in my legislation. I created legislation that says, now, let me just do a survey of the audience. How many of y'all think we need 87,000 new IRS agents in America? I can't hear you. Say it one more time. I think y'all said no. I agree. Why not take the Inflation Reduction Act that actually increases inflation and the 87,000 new IRS agents that are funded by the $82 billion in additional funding for the IRS, which the $82 billion, about $40 billion is a target. People making under $200,000 of income. Why not take those 87,000 positions and put those folks on the border? Why not increase the pay of our border and patrol agents? Why not give them the resources they need? As President of the United States, I would sign my legislation and divert the resources from the IRS to the border so that we could secure our border.
You're going to audit all those people coming in?
They said he was witty. Yes. Well, thank you very much.
Let's take a look at your taxes.
Well, here, listen, I mean,
no, but yes. You would, bottom line,
I would take
put armed Americans, federal employees.
The resources. I would hire more. I would not take the IRS agent.
No, I know, I'm just totally joking.
And run them to the border. No, that's not exactly what I mean. What I mean is that take the billions of dollars and put them where America's security needs are first, which starts with our southern border. And by putting that $40 billion of resources on our southern borders, we could close the door. If you don't control your own back door, it's not your country.
Well, aren't you kind of being invaded at a certain point if you've got millions of military-age men coming into your country and hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying? Why is that not the job of the military to stop?
Listen, I don't disagree with you. One of the things I've said is that I would use every resource we have, to include the United States military, to stop the flow of fentanyl and to make sure that the Mexican cartels cease to exist.
Right.
I have legislation that does, I'll wait for that clap. All right, two people. Why not use the resources of our country to do what is the primary responsibility of the federal government, which is national security?
Amen.